Super. Okay. Are you suffering from sleepless nights? People working you up? People annoying you?
Yes.
Do you feel worked up, underpaid? Work getting it down? We have a prescription for you straight from the desk of Dr. Abraham Lowe. How about a little dose of recovery tools? Okay. All right. Welcome to Recovery International breakout session, workplace symptoms in the workplace. My name is Mike Radlow, and I'm being assisted by Sharon Williams and Jenna Sobelman. And we're going to have a little skit here for you to kind of introduce you to what we have in store. So, without further ado, yeah, Mike Radlow. Yeah. Hey, yeah, I think we can take it. So, yeah, hang on, I think somebody's not going to. Yes, come in. Oh.
Hey, Mike, I have great news. Great news. You know that big account, the Proctor account?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, they thought so highly of us that they're going to move up the deadline for our next production. What do you think about that?
I don't know.
What do you
Well,
mean,
that's-
no? It's the greatest thing that could ever happen to this company. This is the biggest account, not just national. It's not just a domestic account, it's an international account.
Okay.
We gotta get this, Mike.
Okay.
We gotta get this.
What about, I have other projects that are being, I'm not sure about this.
That's okay. Those other projects, you can just take them off the table. How about that? How about that, Mike?
Okay.
You can take them off the table,
All right.
and we can get down to business right now. They moved it up. Instead of 3 months, we're going to get this done in 1 month. 1 month, okay? I know you're the man. You can do it. You can do it. You are a one-man operation.
Okay. Thanks, Cheryl.
Oh, you're so
Thank you
welcome.
very
And I
much.
know you can get it done.
Oh.
Go get 'em, Mike.
Okay, Cheryl. Okay. Thank you, Cheryl.
Hey.
Thank you, Cheryl.
What kind of temper? Am I overstating?
No,
Okay.
I'm very heated.
Yes. So, this is where you guys come in. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Cheryl.
You're welcome.
Wonderful jobs. Seems like they've both been through that before. So, our easel well, we just don't have one. It's okay. We're gonna make this work. So, let's see. What
Do you want to hold it up for you?
No, I'll bring it back up. Is that okay, guys? What tempers or feelings or symptoms do you think, or would you, like Mike, have been going through? Yeah.
I would have had fearful temper.
Okay. Explain a little bit more. Like, okay, so pretend you're not in RI.
Okay, if my
before
boss
RI.
came in and told me I had to have something done way sooner than I thought, my thoughts would start racing, like, how am I gonna get that? How can that happen? I'm too busy as I am. It's impossible. And then I would have started thinking things like insecure thoughts, like, oh, I'm getting overwhelmed. I'm starting to have bodily sensations.
Right.
I'm not thinking straight anymore. I'm really not gonna get this done now.
So all kinds of thoughts.
Yeah,
Not secure thoughts.
no.
Okay. Yes.
Also, resentment, resentment at being imposed.
Okay.
Yeah,
Angry
on-
temper.
Yeah.
Angry temper. Anyone else? Yes.
If I was Mike, I would have had a lot of judgments against you
Okay.
for you disrespecting my space.
Okay. Good job.
I mean, those thoughts come in like the imagination on fire.
Right.
This guy's here to take my job. Or
Right.
My family's going to be homeless now.
Right.
Wow.
Okay. Imagination on fire.
Yeah,
Great.
really.
Anyone
I
else?
suffer
Yes.
from that.
How dare you make a commitment that I have to fulfill, an unreasonable commitment?
Okay.
Unreasonable.
Unreasonable. So a little danger to the social personality.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else?
physically threatened by by you invading his space and throwing those balls at him.
Okay.
Whatever shape those balls were.
Okay.
You're crowding his space.
I see. Those balls represented the triggers. Okay,
Yeah.
so a trigger
Figurative.
can feel like an attack.
Yes.
Okay, big.
I think like fearful temper too, like kind of inadequacy. Like I'm not
Not
gonna be able
good
to
enough?
do this. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
some doubt, some self-doubt.
Yeah,
Okay,
self-doubt.
yes.
I would have been worried about what the other accounts are gonna think about me because I'm not gonna be able to meet commitments I made to them.
Okay, good. So again, that danger to the social personality and also that group mindedness.
Yeah.
She's thinking for the other group. Okay.
And I think the resentment of you coming in and telling what the priorities are you
Yes.
gonna talk to his other
Right?
clients and say, sorry, but we can't fulfill your commitment right now?
Yes.
Yeah, like
Yes.
why is one better, why is one
Yeah.
client good over
Or are
the
you
other
gonna expect him
clients?
to go do it?
Right, right. Okay, good, very good. Anyone else? Yes.
One thing Dr. Lowe would expect of Mike is that he should disillusion
We're
his
gonna-
ego. Get
and-
his ego out of the way so he can be as objective as.
Absolutely, we're gonna get to that. We're gonna absolutely get to the spots and everything. First, we're gonna go through this, and I mean, you can tell that you guys are all with Recovery International because no one said mad, pissed off, angry.
The temperamental language.
Well, the fact that he's a man and she's a woman, he might have been saying, oh, these bossy women in the workplace.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Is that jealousy?
Could
Could be
be, who
jealousy.
knows?
Like, here's this loudmouth woman who's trying to become my boss.
See, I opened Pandora's box.
Who knows? Maybe he was a little jealous that she could yell at him and he couldn't yell back.
Right.
Who knows? That's a good one. This is what I'm talking about. I
He's
like
lucky
it.
He had that gorilla mask. I wish I had that.
Sometimes we feel like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's the mask instead of wearing the
The other
other
mask.
mask, the-
Real mask,
the
well,
flower
Yeah.
mask.
The old mask.
Yeah,
The new mask is different.
Right, right.
Yes.
I don't know if there were other people around, but if, in my work situation, if a supervisor comes up to me, I get comparison temper
Yes.
Oh, yes.
with, just, why aren't they treating the other people like
Yes,
that? Why
yes.
am I being treated like this?
Yes,
And what are they gonna think of me when
Yeah.
they
Yes.
hear her saying this?
yes.
Yes,
Do we
absolutely.
have a good?
Oh, I think we have a great amount coming here.
Well,
All right.
obviously, I mean, it's an over-exaggeration just to get some laughs. But we all know in the work environment, whether we volunteer or we are paid for our services, it can be very tense-provoking, right?
Yeah.
So, absolutely. So what we want to do now is kind of look at some spots that I could use in this kind of an event, okay? So, spots? that
If
we
you
can
can't
cover.
change the situation, you can change your
Yeah.
attitude toward it.
Okay.
My attitude toward it is that I don't have any control over this. Why are you doing this to me? Things that I don't have any control over. And I'm just no good if I'm worked up. I can't function. Okay, yes.
We can excuse rather than excuse for the sake of our mental health. And tempers, among other things, blindness on the other side of the story. Her boss might have just done it to her.
Absolutely.
I was thinking about the other side of the story too, if she's really excited, this is a big opportunity,
Yeah.
wow, she's not thinking about how you're gonna accomplish this.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking, again, of my supervisor, sometimes her behaviors that come across kind of aggressive, and I usually think, well, to know is that I don't know what pressure she's getting from her bosses or the expectations that are coming her way.
So as we tend to use those spots in the situation that we're in, we can start to bring ourselves down, okay? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I forgot to watch.
Yeah, she's okay.
And actually, Jenna, this saying a text message is blocking out the whole
Oh,
upper part anyway. Oh, okay.
That won't be on film.
So, a little bit of my story with recovery. Initially, a recovery came to me because of a non-trivial event. My father died. and I had hit the wall, very depressed. My aunt and uncle, who had gone to recovery in the 60s and 70s, my aunt recovering alcohol. That's when I learned feelings are not facts. Okay, that was the first thing that I got, and I started to go to meetings. At the same time, I also started to see a professional, get medication, what have you. Okay, that all helped. And then I drifted away, as many do. When they first start, they drift away. And then after drifting away, I was able to secure another job. And that was working for, I had gotten a degree in culinary arts and had gone to work in a kitchen here in San Diego at the Lowe's Coronado Bay Resort. I don't know if any of you worked in a kitchen. That's now. Perfect now. Okay, and if it's not, problems. You'll be talked to by the chef. So I was into that environment, and after 3 years, the stress had gotten to me, and we were having a cafe meeting in the dining room, and I completely lost control of myself and went for a symbolic victory with the executive chef. Myself, only 1 year of education, and in culinary arts, and 3 years of experience actually telling a man that's in charge of a multi-million-dollar kitchen that's been in the field 25 years what he can do with his job. And I walked out. Yeah, you feel good right after you do that. But after the fact, the depression started to hit really hard. The thoughts became like, you'll never get a job. People will call for references and they'll say, they'll never hire me again. I could not get rid of those thoughts. They could not go, and I was just home stuck and couldn't get out. Okay, and then I started to come back to recovery. Started to go to meetings, started to use the tools, and mind you, I was out of work for about 2.5 years, using the tools. And then after 2.5 years, I got a job at the post office. I worked there for 2 years. After 2 years, and I was hospitalized. Recovery is a try, fail, try, succeed method. Post office was very, very detrimental to my mental health. Very difficult. I was working 6-day work weeks, and I didn't have any time off, essentially. So, but yet, I was still able to accomplish the mission by delivering the mail. Even though that I ended up in the hospital, I still could do my job with a nervous and anxious disposition. I mean, they would give me a truck of mail and say, go deliver it. I was in symptoms, but I was still able to do it. And after 2 years, I was able to maintain the job. I just couldn't hang on to it, which was okay. And then I still stayed with recovery, still practiced the method. A month later, I found another job with the graciousness of Lisa Garcia, and used the method. I realized that if I want to be employed, if I want to make it in this world, I have to be employed. I needed that. I mean, it's something that I needed to do. So I just made that commitment that I would use those tools to do the recovery method. So I've been there now 10 years. I've had a few temperamental deadlocks, but I've recovered very quickly. I've been there for 10 years. I do maintain my good mental health while working there, and I was promoted just recently. And as promotion comes, new challenges come. New things just constantly getting me worked up now. And for instance, I'll go into a staff meeting, okay, and I know that it's going to be tense-provoking for me. So I'll start writing down spots on that sheet because I know I'm going to get worked up. And when I do that, I work myself down. I can listen better. I don't make it about me. I can respond better. I'm more in the moment. I'm more of a team player. And I think that overall, and with that, you know, I start to feel better about myself. Just recently, I went to an employment focus group, and one of the directors of a mental health program here in San Diego said, you know, work is medicine. I mean, 10 years ago, I was like, what are you talking about? Work is medicine if you have tools to help you with those trivialities. This is about how you socialize, how you accomplish things, feel good about yourself. Endorsing is important, but we go to work because of that feeling of somebody help me here. Worth.
Self-worth.
We feel good about ourselves, about worth.
Purpose.
So, yeah. So, my story. So, thank you.
Hello, everyone. How are you today?
Good.
Great. How many of you have been the desert? Raise your hand.
Where?
The desert. The desert. Okay, great. Thank you. We Californians love our deserts. And let me tell you why. The desert, on one hand, can be a place that's hot and arid and also quite desolate. It's a place of survival where only the fittest survive. Insects, animals, plants, cacti. But, in the words of a famous writer, what makes the desert so beautiful is that it has hidden wells. I have had many work experiences, and sometimes those experiences have taken me to an outer environment of the hot, arid, harsh desert. I've taught school, I've fundraised, I've done sales, I've been a library assistant, I've taught ESL abroad and here in the States. I have a vast amount of experience, both publicly and private. But in each and every work experience I've ever had, I've had my desert experience. Before recovery, I remember going to a meeting, just like this, as a matter of fact, a room full of people. And one of the people leading the meeting stood up and made a cruel, disparaging remark to me. I was so hurt. I was so bruised. I was so wounded. I walked out. And I realized that I was in the desolate desert. I had been working overtime so much that it became my regular time. I had a headache every single day when I left work. I went through how many bottles of aspirin? I couldn't sleep. My shoulders were always tense. My neck was always crooked in the morning. Until one day, I couldn't get out of bed. I could not get out of bed by myself. My husband actually had to lift me up. I had to scoot to the edge of the bed, and he would actually help me rise up. I knew then I needed help. That's when I discovered Recovery International. I saw people just like myself sitting around the table, giving examples, using their spots, chatting about online meetings, and I knew perhaps this is the place for me. And by, when I went back to work and started spotting, my headaches disappeared. The smile that had left my face came back. I was able to start my day and end my day on time. Those evening sunset walks I used to take with my husband, I started doing again. On the weekend, I started going to brunch with friends. I had gotten a renewed breath breathed into me, and I was replenished by the spots that RI had taught me. My inner landscape helped me in my desert experience. Spotting, to know is not to know. If we can't change a situation, we can change our attitude about it. And my favorite, humor is my best friend and temper my worst enemy. We all have had our desert experiences, but with the tools of Recovery International, we can draw on those inner wells to quench our parchedness, the harshness, of the tension and the stress of sometimes having a work environment that isolates you, that causes a rise in feelings, that makes you hot, we can spot and cool ourselves off. I ask you today, if you haven't had the experience, if you're a visitor, come and join our eyes. See for yourself. Taste and see that it is good. Quench your thirst. Spot. Go online. Join a meeting. Invite your friends. You're not alone. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Jenna. I'm gonna look at my paper a little bit and I memorize as well. I hope you are all endorsing for being here. As my mentor would say, if you're not endorsing, you're indicting. And a little bit about myself. I have a diagnosis of depression and anxiety. I've been going to therapy since I can remember, family therapy, individual therapy, ever since I was a little girl. Tried everything, so to say. I even moved away from my family because the therapist told me I would end up in a hospital again if I didn't move away from my situation. Until I found Recovery International almost 3 years ago, I thought I would end up back into a mental hospital. But I could stand here and tell you all about the tools I use and the recovery method, which I think you all pretty much know, and how I use it in my volunteering and my work. But first, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Supergirl and how she uses the tools and the spots in her workplace. And yes, I said Supergirl, the cousin of Superman. Even Supergirl uses spots. In a recent episode of Supergirl, she was fighting a villain whose superpower was causing fear. She makes you remember your worst fears. Everyone has those triggers, those fears. This is average. It's how we respond to those triggers, fears. As Dr. Lowe tells us, fear is a belief, and beliefs can be changed. And that is exactly what Supergirl did. With help from her sister and talking through the facts, she was able to change her most fearful thoughts that were keeping her from being the Supergirl she was then, back into the Supergirl she was supposed to be. She was able to combat this villain by using the same cognitive therapy we use in Recovery International, known as SPOTS. While I know that Supergirl is not real, the writers of the shows are. What this tells me is that they have villains and fearful thoughts at workplaces and volunteering. If Supergirl can do it, we can too. Like many of us, it is a fear that keeps us from doing things. And I'm sure it was not easy for Supergirl or any of us to change those thoughts in our heads. But I do know firsthand that with Dr. Lowe's books and the Recovery International training, it is possible. Thank you.
Work is medicine. Why do we go to work? Other than the fact that for income, put food on our table, clothing on our back, shelter, what draws us to work? Social constraints, that's expected of us. know, maybe do you want to share some of your reasons why you work? Yeah, Judy?
To contribute to a company, or, you know, just to make your own contribution to what your capabilities. It makes you feel good.
Yes.
I read somewhere that 80% of Americans go to work because they're deathly afraid of the consequences if they don't go.
Yeah.
Well, I'm the same way.
Work's good for mental health, right? Yes, Nancy.
So, it's part of my identity.
Yeah.
My sense
Absolutely.
of purpose used to be too much part of my identity.
And that's a strong pull, right? But when we have that strong pull to go to work, yet when we go there, we're racked by our symptoms and we can't be there. So that's a difficult quandary to be. I wanted to be there, I wanted to be part of that. So the tools, you know, we incorporate those tools in our daily work life. Any of you have personal, yes?
I go to work, now my work experience has been gratitude, because there was a time when I didn't work. I was so depressed, I didn't work. And I learned I didn't like not being productive. I didn't like being looked at with pity. I didn't like that feeling. I began to feel lost when I wasn't working, although I did volunteer work. But I liked making an income and joining in the group, helping with the group productivity. Work has taught me how to be a part of a group, how to blend in instead of going my own independent way. And work is truly my laboratory for using the Recovery International method. Because if there's so many triggers coming at me, like those ping pongs coming at Mike, that
Well, you know, the ping pongs, they would have stuck, right? But
Yeah.
now they bounce off, right? Because we have our tools.
Exactly. They bounce off now. And if they don't bounce off, I can always pick up Dr. Lowe's book and read an excerpt about the averageness of being uncomfortable in an uncomfortable situation. Or I can work down my feelings of exceptionality. I love the materials that we have here, and I will always be a part of this organization. Thank you.
Any personal experiences on the tools of recovery in your work environment? Yeah, Jim?
I work with a coach, business thing. So anyhow, they came up with why I work 7 days a week, night and day, is because of my unquenchable thirst of affirmation.
Secure thoughts. Yeah. If we don't have those, that can be an exercise in tedium and symptoms. Anyone else? Yes.
Well, I use it a lot at work. You know, when you hear somebody says something about you, you know, and it used to be, no, not like, you know, they'll make little comments, you know, kind of thing. And it does wound, you know, it's that initial flare, but then you have to use your spots, and like, you know, the outer environment doesn't set the standards for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't set the standards for them,
No.
you know, so, I mean, it takes a lot of work, but thank heavens I've got the tools, you know.
Anyone else? Yes.
It's important to endorse too, because these little things that she was talking about, paying your bills on time, getting food on the table every night, those things we don't endorse for. We just take it for granted. But those are the things that make you a recovery member and different from the person who was caught in their depression.
Yeah. Oh, so Linda.
Yeah, I remember when I first went back to work after I had been hospitalized, and I actually started back to work just a couple of weeks after I'd been in the hospital, but I had a job where they didn't really know where I was and what I was doing, so I could be lying in bed at home. But it was maybe 2 years later I actually got a job where I had to show up and be in the office, and I was petrified. And I knew I had my recovery tools, but I just knew they were gonna know how incompetent I was. And the most somebody said is, don't be nervous, you're gonna be fine. And so they were giving me just a very simple tool, but I've always looked at recovery tools in the workplace as our secret weapons, because we've got them and they don't.
Yeah.
And,
True. Very
and
true.
as we go along, we build up our thing. But I've always felt too that people that are starting back to work, if they could have an RI job coach, somebody they could call or be in touch with as they're having trouble at work, would really be a beneficial,
Absolutely.
That would be wonderful.
beneficial way to,
They put gyms
yeah.
in some of these big corporations. They need to have some
good
mutual aid or something in for their employees.
Right.
Instead of Google having a sleep room, have them have a mutual aid room.
Yeah.
You know,
Or
it's
even
not
just a
even-
way, so somebody can
There was
contact
somebody
their
there that's
recovery
trained,
support
and you come
person.
in wanting to complain, and they said, well, no, let's look at this other way, because to talk it up
Yeah,
is
it's
to work it up.
Right.
You know, and it just be,
Have you had occasion to share your spots with other employees around you?
Yeah, I do, actually, I do. In the clubhouse, I work in a clubhouse that caters to people with major psychiatric disabilities, and I do use it all the time. We have a meeting there. So and the important thing is that also that my reactions influence my co-employees. You know, they don't become so, elevated with their emotions and symptoms. You know, I can represent a sense of calmness. I mean, they don't know how I'm feeling inside. I'd be, a lot of tension. Usually I feel tension and tenseness and that rise in feeling. And then, a loss of, not cognitive thought, but I get really confused. And so when I write those things down, I even have a 3-ring binder of, full of handwritten examples. I just, sometimes during the week, I gotta take some time out and then just write that down, what's going on. And then, of course, going to meetings, I'll spike up the meetings if I'm really having some difficulty. Go to more meetings, give examples. I know lots of work examples, right, over the years. It helps. It's keep me employed. I haven't had a serious outbreak in a long time. Yeah.
I think what helps me at work is to remind myself that it's a triviality in comparison to my mental health, because I always thought that if I couldn't do a good job at work, it meant that then there was something wrong with me. And of course thinking that, those thoughts, that all of that, I would go downhill if I felt like I was making mistakes at work or I wasn't doing a good job. So now I remind myself it's all a triviality in comparison to my mental health, so I
Right.
make sure I don't think those extreme kind of thoughts like
Right.
that. And remind myself I only need to be average, because even though I am an average worker, I always wanted to be something else than
Yeah.
average.
Yeah.
And my skills and my knowledge is everything is average, but I had this imagination of being more than average, and that was bad for my mental health too. So I would kind of go,
Seesaw back.
so now I know my mental health first.
Nancy.
That just reminds me when I started my current job 4 years ago, my supervisor said, well, it's time for evaluation. You need to do your self-evaluation first, and then we'll do it. So I checked it off, and it was like average and something, and then exceptional, and I checked average for everything. I was like, I'm average, And my supervisor, she goes, you checked average for everything. She goes, everybody else checks that they're exceptional for everything. She says, really? She says, I've only known 2 nurses that have truly been exceptional and everything. And I said, I'm not exceptional. And I had just really just started recovery, but already, of course it's always drummed, you have to be perfect, no mistakes, and it's like I'm a human being. I will do my best certainly not make a mistake in anything but something that's really trivial. But I still, they give me a really good actually, I don't even look anymore at what I'm just,
Well,
I still have the job. I'm average. You know what I mean? It's fine.
Average at work is doing your job to the expectation of your employer.
Which is a really high standard, but still, I'm just average. I'm not.
takes the pressure off.
Super nurse.
Yes, and just to relate to what everyone else is saying, we have a lot of pressure to get work done and be productive. And when I think of, I just need 51%, that does more to relax me than anything else that anyone could say to me. 51%, just slightly over.
Yes.
It was a trigger for me when Mike put on the gorilla mask, because when I first started with recovery, I got that idea too, wear the mask, but it turned out I was just an angry guy with a gorilla mask.
It was a werewolf, by the way.
I had to associate wear the mask with drop the judgment, and you cannot let one of them go. You know, you have to not back off of the wearing the mask and dropping the judgment, controlling my speech muscles. It's so physical that I let the mask control me physically, so I don't have to worry about temper breaking out or something.
You know, by using the tools, you all have better experiences at work overall.
Okay, well,
Which one do you think will entertain us the most?
I think we will. Who thinks they know, where is it? Dr. Lowe or recovery pretty darn well. I don't know if we should let Celinda, play. Just kidding. So,
Do you want to film this part?
you can turn it off. That's